Good day, collectors and viewers. Social Distance Warrior is back. Today we're going to look at one of our original 12 figures, the Stormtrooper, the Imperial Stormtrooper. One of the most iconic characters in Star Wars. You instantly recognize who this character is. It's as recognizable as Darth Vader, and he's appeared in so many forms of medium and had many releases over the years. We're going to celebrate him today. We're going to look at all the releases we have. We're going to stick to the original Stormtrooper. So we're not going to look at the Incinerator Stormtrooper, any expanded universe Stormtroopers. We're not going to look at the Sand Trooper. We're going to keep those for separate videos so we can do more of these because this is fun and it can be a little more focused and hopefully help you out in your searching for the perfect Stormtrooper, or, you know, completing and wondering whether it's worthwhile to add any additional Stormtroopers. So let's start with the original one. Back in 1977, Star Wars came out, and it was enormously popular. And of course, initially there was an early bird certificate because they couldn't make any figures for the Christmas 1977. So we'd have to wait till 1978 to get our first Stormtrooper figure. And of course, that followed suit, and we have him right over here. So in 1978, on the Star Wars 12 back, one of the original characters we get is the Stormtrooper. So here he is. You can see how he stands the test of time even today. A perfect figure, an amazing army builder. He comes with his blaster. He's got his articulation on his arms and his legs. You can see the sculpt on the blaster there. The blaster comes in a couple of different colors, blue and black. This one here is blue. Okay, you can see the paint job, the detail on the character. The head's fixed. You can't turn this head. It's molded right onto the body there. But this is the Stormtrooper they would use through all original Star Wars movies. So episode 4, 5, and 6, Star Wars Empire Jedi. And of course on the Power of the Force line as well. That came after that, before the line ended. So that's the Stormtrooper. You can see him from the front. You can see the nice sculpting on the knees, separate from each other here. You can see the sculpting here on the waist, the chest plate. You know, the black lines defined on the elbows and of course on the gloves. We turn him to the side. That's what he looks like there. Let's turn him around to the back so you can see him as well. He's got his sculpting on the back here too. Reminiscent later on in the prequel trilogy with the battle droids. But that's a nice little, you know, homage to the Stormtrooper figure. We can see the nice little imprint there on the bottom where he's made. Hong Kong, 1977. There's the imprint there. There's his foot pegs on the bottom, so you can stand him in your Death Star or your Star Destroyer or your playsets that Kenner used to produce that we don't get nowadays. We don't get many playsets. We got a few recently, but it'd be nice if they added little pegs to these playsets so they don't fall over. So that's the original release, and again, that's from 1978 all the way to 1985. That's the figure you'd see in stores before Star Wars disappeared. So we wouldn't see him again till many, many years or many moons later in the Power of the Force 2 line. So Star Wars makes a triumphant return. Started with some media in the 90s there with the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire novels, that trilogy. And then, of course, George Lucas talking about doing a special edition of the original trilogy. And Star Wars starting getting popular again with a Dark Horse comic. So with the Power of the Force 2, we'd get finally a new sculpt of the Stormtrooper. So we get him on card first, which is over here. And they all had that beefier look. That's the Stormtrooper. He was never able to get away with it, but he still looks a lot better than some of the other figures do. Comes in an amazing card. You can see the nice sculpt of the Stormtrooper here. He comes with his blaster rifle, and he comes with this, you know, what they call an infantry cannon. Something I never remember seeing in the movies, but nice to have extra accessories. I'm sure it was great for kids to play with. So that's him on card. If we flip it around over to the back, we can see the other figures in the line there that came out originally. The Stormtrooper, Vader, Han, Luke, Chewbacca, R2, Ben, and 3PO. And then, of course, some ships redone from the original one. So these are original sculpts just repainted of the TIE Fighter, the X-Wing, the Land Speeder, and, of course, the Millennium Falcon. And then a nice bio here. I always like the bio for these figures. They initially came with these bios that you could cut out and keep or read on the back. And, you know, it's the Stormtrooper one's interesting. So as you look at his details there, height, classification, human, affiliation, empire. In the bio there, right, it talks about cloning, which there was no prequel trilogy at the time. So feared throughout the galaxy, Stormtroopers are elite shock troopers deployed in support of both ground forces and the Imperial fleet. Stormtroopers are unquestionably loyal to the Empire, and their unshakable military discipline has led speculation that they may be the result of accelerated Imperial cloning experiments, although this has never been confirmed. And I remember talking about this as a kid, as a teenager growing up as well. You know, the lore of Star Wars, there wasn't really much known about these original movies other than some novels that came out, and there was a speculation that the Stormtroopers were clones, and that's why we never saw their face. And of course, that would be disputed later on with the prequel trilogy, and then of course come back to them being clones or not clones with more recent lore. So that's this figure over here on the Power of the Force 2. He's got the beefier look. You can see he's got a pre-posed stance, so you can't stand him straight like the original one was over here. You gotta have to have one foot standing forward, like he's walking in an action pose. He's beefier. His chest plate, you know, sticks out there. Looks like he's been working out since the early days. He does have the same detailing like the original one did, with the, you know, black markings here on the shoulder, on the elbows, and just under the shoulders here, and of course the black on the gloves and then on the boots. And then they've painted some, you know, dots over here under his chest on the waist part there to give it a little more detail, and you can see the head sculpt as well close up there. So he's got your standard, you know, articulation. The arms move up and down, the legs move back and forth. There's nothing on the knees or anything like that. The head does turn this time, which you never had on the original one. So that's an added feature there. And we'll show you what it looks like from this side too. And then we'll show you what it looks like from the back. And of course, he still has the imprint insignia there on the back, on his back plate there too. And of course, some more painting here around the legs to show he's got his armor on. And then some gray up here on the helmet as well. So that's what we get in 95. And again, he'd get released a number of times throughout the waves in the Power of the Force 2. He'd come out in the green card, he'd come out in the freeze frame, he'd get a number of releases on there. And then we'd also get another version of him in 96, this time on the Power of the Force 2, on a deluxe line. So they made a deluxe line. They had a Stormtrooper, they had a Han Solo, and they had a Luke Skywalker. And they all came with these expanded universe vehicles that weren't in the movies. The Luke one was kind of like a skiff to pay homage to the original one. Han's was a really interesting one. It was like some smuggler's jetpack. And then the Stormtrooper was called Crowd Control. So it's almost the identical sculpt to the single release, except he's got a hole in the back on this one to hold this crowd control gadget here, jetpack. And it's actually pretty neat. From all the ones that they released, this one's probably the neatest. It does have some action features over here that you can use. There's nothing on this one here. This is more like a laser in that hand, and it's got a little rubber tube that holds it together here. And on this side here, he's got a clamp, so you can pick up all those evil, you know, annoying rebels that are getting in their way. And they can do that by pressing this little button here on the side inwards. If you press that in, that retracts and enacts the claw. So you can grab those pesky rebels. And if we turn that around over here to the back, you can see it's got what appears to be a jetpack. And it's nicely detailed. It's painted. It's got some interesting insignias over here. It almost looks like a foreign language, which it's supposed to be. And it's got little, you know, vents sticking out of the bottom here. And that one's got a nice little feature as well, because you can bring that back together like this. Clamp it in. Let's see if I can get it to work. Yep. And then, you know, that acts as a jetpack. And I guess if he's flying, that's the stance he'd take. And then if he's going to land, these things open up. It's just a little lever there in the back. You press that. Let's turn it around to show you. And then that would force that open. And you could come down and cause some crowd control. So it's exactly the same sculpt, but it was a nice addition. I actually enjoyed this one because I wanted to get more Stormtroopers. So it was a worthwhile addition to the collection. Let's put him back over there. The next Stormtrooper we'd get, we wouldn't get him for a few more years. So we jump from 96 all the way to 99. So the prequel movies come out. They start that whole Comtech line. And of course, there's a Comtech line for original trilogy characters as well. There wasn't many of them, but rather than coming on the Darth Maul card, they came on a green card. Okay, with Darth Vader on the picture there. And the Stormtrooper got another release. So that's this guy over here. He got released a number of times. That initial one did have some battle damage over here. Mine doesn't have battle damage because it's a release that came out just after, but it's exactly the same sculpt of figure. And this would get released numerous times. It would come out in battle packs, and of course it will come out as a fan club exclusive to Army Build. So you have some additional articulation that you never had on the Stormtrooper here. You have ball joints here, swivels at the shoulders. So you can move the arms up this way now, forward, bring it out. As far as the elbows here, you can swivel them in and out, which we never had on the Stormtrooper as well before. So we can do that on both sides just to show you quickly. Swivel there. And then, of course, on the legs here, too, you have articulation on the knees, which is brand new on these figures. We never had that, so you can position them sitting down. You can't turn anything here past, but it's in a fixed pose. But nonetheless, having that added articulation was great on the Stormtrooper because you can position them like they're kneeling down in attack poses. Army build them, and a lot of people did. Of course, he has articulation there at the waist as well. Let's show you what it looks like from the side. So there he has his gun holster. This holster doesn't have any option to put the gun inside. It's just painted on, sculpted and painted onto the side of his leg there on the belt. So it's separate from the leg. It's just over the leg. He's got his, apparatus here on the back. He's got his insignia, of course, over here on the back as well. Painted on. His helmet's still painted on nicely there too. So you can see that added feature there. That's what he looks like from the rear. And then just one more thing on the bottom here is, his boots are painted black from the bottom. And they have peg holes as well. So that was your Comtech Stormtrooper figure that got numerous releases, but was a worthy addition and a nice upgrade from the beefier one that we had with the Power of the Force 2, this guy here. So you can see the change. But again, a lot of things that were going on at the time with the Power of the Force 2 collection is like really strange height differences on the figures. Some would look big, some would look bulky. There'd be a number of years before we started getting realistic figures that had proper height and, body proportions on them. So he did come with a few accessories as well, which was nice. He had his blaster rifle, and he came with this accessory we could stack the guns, like a storage rack. So I wanted to bring that out just to show you as well. It's pretty neat. So it sits on the floor there, and he came with his rifle. You take the rifle, and it's got a little indent here on the bottom, and, an indent there on the side, and you put the guns and have them sitting in there. And I believe you saw them in the background a few times in the movies. But it's nice to have these added additional accessories with the figures because it lets you build more, especially if you're going to army build. You can do a whole armory for the Stormtroopers. So we wouldn't see a new Stormtrooper until 5 years later, so 2004. So Hasbro decides to release what's called an original trilogy collection. So premium action figures, vintage was that they were starting with. Stormtrooper was one of them. They made Luke, they made Ben Kenobi, they made Darth Vader, they made a number of them, C-3PO, R2-D2, a number of them, and they put them on the original card back. This is the precursor and the evolution of the vintage collection that we know today. Started with these figures, and they charged a little bit more. They came in original card backs on blister, with a blister protecting them, and they had figures with added articulation that were better than the normal stuff you can buy in the store. And the Stormtrooper was one of them. That's this guy over here. And you can see he comes with, a more accurate looking blaster pistol, a more accurate looking Stormtrooper as well. He does have his articulation there at the elbows, the brand new sculpt. He has it at the shoulders and at the elbows, which is nice, and at the wrist. So you can move that wrist in and out as well on the figure. And you have that on both sides there just to show you what that looks like. So lots of poses on this figure. Little things, little nuances with these figures that used to come with. The swivel's not being painted as well. So if you have them up in this pose here, it kind of stands a little bit like an eyesore that it's not painted correctly. But, this little stuff that you can live without, or you can paint yourself if you don't like them. You can see there's movement here on the chest as well. It swivels up and down, so you can position the figure if you want him laying down, looking up. The head comes in a ball joint, which is nice. So you can sculpt that, position your head up, down, side by side to side, like he's thinking. Whatever you want to do with a Stormtrooper. We can look down over here below the waist, the legs, swivel up. You can bend them at the knees. You can bend them at the ankles. See that articulation there? He was a complete Stormtrooper. This was our definitive Stormtrooper for many years. And of course, you can have him sitting, or you can have him kneeling, or you can have him laying down, whatever you want it to do. Here's what it looks like from the side, just to show you that as well. And then we'll turn him around over here to the back. So here now you can see on the back where the previous mold had the gun holster here that was just sculpted onto the belt and you couldn't put a blaster in. This one can. See how it's got the little hole in there? So you can store his blaster inside here as well if you want him doing something else. And of course, there's the insignia there on the back. You can see the paint operations here, a little more realistic. They're smaller, they're not as big. And that was our definitive Stormtrooper. That was in 04, and that stood the test of time for a long time. But when you look at him now, you're going to see what's coming out later on. You'll find that he is dated, particularly that head sculpt on the figure is a little more dated today. So that's what we had in 04. Let's try and put him back here without having him fall over. Okay. Next time we get him would be in 2006 in a comic pack with Tarkin. So they did these comic packs with the figures in a little more comic color scheme. And it wasn't the Stormtrooper that we got in 04. It would be the previous one from the Comtech that we get re-released over here. I just wanted to bring that forward to show you that figure. I like these figures, you know, even though Tarkin comes in a green outfit, a little more, you know, different, a little bit of an eyesore. The Stormtrooper is neat because with that blue shadowing on there, the red eyes, it really has that nice comic feel. But it's definitely that figure that we have here from the Comtech line. So that's, you know, one of the original comic book packs that they had back when the 30th anniversary was coming out. And then here's what it looks like on the back, just so you can see. You know, there's Tarkin, there's the Stormtrooper, and there's some of the other sets that you can get in there as well. So I just wanted to make mention of that too. That was a worthy Stormtrooper to bring up just because the paint operations were so different. Next one we get would be in 2007, this time with the 30th anniversary of the original movie. We'd get a Stormtrooper with a removable helmet. He'd come with a coin to pay homage to the Power of the Force line. But this is the first time we get him with no helmet on. That's this guy over here. So it's a brand new sculpt again. Lots of controversy with this figure here. So the removable helmet sometimes can be, you know, iffy on these figures. It takes them out of proportion a little bit. It does it a bit for this Stormtrooper. It was a nice welcome addition. He's got some scarring you can see on the face there on his cheek. But you'll notice one important thing here. He's a clone. He looks like Jango Fett's clone, right? So there was a big, you know, hoopla for a number of years saying that Stormtroopers were clones as well. And everybody's like, well, I don't think they're clones. Ones in the original trilogy, when they'd talk in the background, they didn't sound like clones. They sounded like, you know, regular people. So that changed over the years as well. They seem to incorporate, and particularly now in the new movies with the Bad Batch, with the cartoons, you can see that they phased out the clone troopers and they brought in, you know, elite humans or regular humans, loyalists of the Empire, to be Stormtroopers. And so they've done away with this, but nonetheless, this figure is neat. Let's take that helmet out of his hand just to show you what he looks like. Show you his articulation. So you see the head sculpt, the head's on a ball as well. So you have that option. So technically you can take this head off and put a different head on if you wanted to do Luke or Han in Stormtrooper disguise. You have that option if you can fit them on that peg. He does have articulation there at the shoulders, swivel at the shoulders. Again, a white painted part of his body here that stands out that should have been black, but it's there. At the elbows, he's got articulation there as well. And of course, at the wrists, he can bring that up and down. He's got that on both sides. If we look here, you know, at his torso, we got that movement just like we did on the 30th anniversary collection one. He's got his belt sculpted on. Down here, articulation. You can't really bring his leg up past that point, so it impedes it a bit, but you can bend his knees, and you can bend his ankle there as well. That works on both sides. He does have that working holster, and you can see that I have the gun sitting in the holster there on this figure. Let's bring that down as well, just to show you what he looks like. Let's show you from the side. That's what he looks like, and that's what he looks like from the back. And you can see the paint job that's on there. On the back of the head's inside a bodysuit, okay? And if we take that helmet and put it on right now, we have a Stormtrooper, but you can see the helmet's a little bit out of scale. It's a little large, but it's nice. We had another Stormtrooper, a new version of the Stormtrooper, and you can't pass out on a Stormtrooper when they come out. And if you like the fact that they had removable helmets and you can do a diorama with them being in training or just hanging out at the Imperial base, it's a nice version of the Stormtrooper to have in your collection. So let's put that guy back over there. So that was in 07, and we'd fast forward a number of years before we'd get another Stormtrooper. This one would be in 2011. This is the vintage collection line. They'd make an Empire Strikes Back card back Stormtrooper. This was basically the Stormtrooper from 2004, but they tweaked them a little bit. They kit bashed them with legs from the 2010 Sand Trooper from the vintage collection. So I don't have that figure here because I had so many Stormtroopers at the time, I never ended up picking up that figure, thinking it was the same one that I had. And of course, doing research Now, when I'm trying to make a video, I realized there was some changes on these figures, and I would like to have these figures on card back for today's standards, but I don't have one. So I will throw one up there to show you a picture of. It's a worthy mention because it is slightly different and considered another Stormtrooper. So we jump a couple years to 2013, and there'd be a vintage collection 2-pack, a couple of them, number of them that were released at different retailers. This one would be from Kmart, and it's the vintage collection Imperial scanning crew. So there was one with an Imperial officer and a scanning crew member that came with one part of that scanning apparatus they took on to the Falcon. And then there was another set with a Stormtrooper and a scanning crew member. And we have that Stormtrooper here. And this is actually TK421. So if you remember the whole TK421 from A New Hope, where TK421, why aren't you at your post? This was that Stormtrooper before he got attacked going into the Falcon and had Luke and Han, take his armor. So very similar sculpt to that original one from 2004, but this one's got a brand new belt with a comlink on it. So I'm going to show you that in a second. So you can see the articulation still there. The head sculpt's a little bit better as well. The paint job's a little more refined. The grill here on the side with the blue accents, it's a little bit smaller, looks a little more realistic. The face paint on the helmet is nicer as well on the figure, and it's got a brand new belt. We turn it here to the side. You can see that it's got the little comlink there on the belt itself. And that does come off. I'm just going to take it out to show you. Very easy to lose, okay? Very, very easy to lose. And you can take that and put it into his hand. Or you can use it with your Luke Skywalker. So you can call 3PO and R2 and ask them to turn off the trash compactor, right? Shut down all the garbage chutes on the detention level. That's what he called with. That's what saved his life, okay? So that comes with this Stormtrooper, and it's got a little slot there on the belt. You can see where it attaches on. So it's a very, very tiny accessory, very easy to lose. I'd be very careful if I was you taking this figure out and how you display them, because once that's gone, it's going to eat you alive. The fact that you have this Stormtrooper that's got an added accessory and you've lost it. So let's turn around here to the side just to show you his belt from the back. And you can see right away the belt's a little bit different. It's got this slightly different paint job here, and it's got this little silver accent wire that's painted on there as well. So a little more detail on the figure, and that's TK421. He does come with a neat blaster as well. So that blaster comes apart, and he can turn it into one where he shoves it under his shoulder blade there to shoot. So it's got some added accessories on there as well. So it's a nice new blaster that he comes with. And articulation-wise, what you're used to. So that was from that 2-pack in 2013. So we jump 1 year to 2014 to Saga Legends. So Disney takes over, right? Disney takes over and they start making Star Wars figures further. They discontinue the vintage collection and they go back to basics on figures, and they make a Mission Series Saga Legends line. And the Stormtrooper was the first figure in that line. And as an army builder, and I think they were trying to go with a whole look to kind of compete with the vintage figures, standard articulation, because they did make a number of figures and you can kind of compare them to that. They just had regular standing poses. They didn't have any action poses. Here's the Stormtrooper. He's a nice figure. He's not a bad figure, but compared to what I've shown you, it's definitely a step backwards. So that's what he looks like there. He does have, articulation on the head. It's not on a ball. You can't move that up and down. You can just go side to side. Okay, same with the arms. No articulation to take that arm out, just up and down. He's got his blaster in hand there. He's got his leg movement. You can put his legs up. Okay, arms up. He's got the paint applications over here, like you expect on the Stormtrooper. But definitely a basic version of that Stormtrooper, but it's a brand new sculpt. So worth mentioning in the review here, and maybe a cheaper option sometimes if you're looking just to army build for characters in the background. He's not a bad sculpt, but then, we've used to getting better figures. So, having that option of seeing stuff that's articulated and then getting this stuff and then justifying why you should get it made it a little more difficult. And you can see that he's got, his shoulder pads coming up over his shoulders there on the armor on both sides. So it's a little bit different. You can easily see that he's a different figure than the one that you had. And of course his pegs here on the feet. But that's what we get from the Mission Series on that initial release. And he'd come out a couple more times. One with a 2-pack as well. With a shoulder pauldron to be one of the commanders. But that's the Mission Series Stormtrooper. There would be another one from the Rebels line, also in 2014, that would come out, and it had a more cartoony look, the Rebels look. I used to love the Clone Wars figures. You know, they had a definite established style to the animation, and they had articulation as well. But with these figures at the time, they didn't put any articulation on them. They were very, very simple. Here's the Stormtrooper, the Rebels version. From 2014, you can see it's got an exaggerated helmet there because he's got the cartoon look, and that's fine. It's nice to have a different Stormtrooper. I don't mind that, you know. It'd be nice to have, you know, a little more articulation on these guys, but the head kind of you can't really turn it far because the helmet comes up over the chest plate. He's got his blaster in hand there. He doesn't have any, you know, swivel here at the waist. Legs go up and down. That far, okay. He's got a glossier look to him. We turn him to the side just so you can see what he looks like. So he's got that large head. You can definitely see he's got a more cartoony look to him. And then, of course, the insignia there on the back. And then the look of the figure from the back. And then he's got his foot pegs here in the bottom as well. So that was the Rebels version of the Stormtrooper. I just wanted to bring him in there because he is the classic Stormtrooper look. Just to give you every representation of him. So we'd get a new Stormtrooper again. Technically 2013, 2014. I found them in 2014. When they discontinued the Vintage Collection line, they continued on with the Black Series line. So they made Black Series 6-inch figures, and they also made Black Series 3 3/4-inch figures. And the Stormtrooper was released. And he's basically exactly the same figure as a Sand Trooper that we got from the Vintage Collection, the 2012 Sand Trooper. But they took the pauldron off, they took the backpack off. And they threw him on a card and called him a Stormtrooper. So that's him over here. So technically still a new Stormtrooper compared to what we did have. He's got a nice look to him. I don't know. I love this Stormtrooper for years, mainly because the helmet, the look on the helmet, he looks meaner. He looks a lot meaner than the original one did because they made the eyes smaller. So if I take one of these guys, like the TK421 here, and I put them side by side, and you look at the helmets and the eyes in particular, you can see he's got a much meaner, more sinister look. I prefer that on the Stormtrooper. Makes them look a little more sinister, a little more, you know, imposing as characters in the background. The nice feature about these guys here, of course, he does have full articulation at the shoulders, at the elbows, you know, at the wrists. You can turn them there. And the nice thing is, just like the Sand Trooper, you do have a ball now on the legs, so you can move him out further. You're not just restricted to putting the figure out with his legs out, with his knees up. You can actually do the splits. You can have his leg all the way back. You can put him like he's crippled on the ground after he's fought some rebels. You can do a lot of things with these figures. He's got the ball, of course, at the chest piece there, at the waist, or you can turn him side to side, and you can see what he looks like at the knees. I know at the ankles. I can try and turn that up to show you a little bit. Not much movement there, but it's there. Okay, and it's a nice, you know, defining sculpt on this character. One thing that does stand out when I turn him to the side, you'll notice that because they took that shoulder pauldron off to release him, you can see the big gap here on the side. It almost looks like you can see underneath his head there. He doesn't have a head underneath, just the ball, but it definitely stands out because it's sitting a little bit higher. If we turn around to the back, we can see that he did have that slot where the backpack's supposed to go, like the Sand Trooper, that stayed on there. And that's what he looks like from the back. And then, of course, we turn him back around here. We look underneath. We see that he does have his pegs on his feet there. So you still have the option to stick him on a stand or stick him in a playset. But that's the figure that we got from the Black Series 3 3/4-inch line. Let's put him back over there. So we wouldn't get another Stormtrooper for a few more years. You know, Disney first released Force Awakens. And then following the Force Awakens, the following year, we got a brand new Star Wars movie that was just before A New Hope, Rogue One. And of course, in Rogue One, we finally see Stormtroopers again. So Hasbro continued on making figures, lots of them in 5 points of articulation form. They hadn't gone back to the super articulated form unless they were doing those Black Series ones and mainly rehashes for the Black Series ones. But the Stormtrooper got a nice 5 points of articulation figure. That's this guy over here. He's one of the best sculpts that you're going to find on this guy. Check out the head sculpt on this guy. Let's bring it close. The camera close just to show you. The head sculpt is amazing. In 3 3/4-inch form, it looks like a realistic version of this figure compared to the stuff that we've seen. Look at the paint applications. Look at the shine to the character. You know, look at the sculpting on the helmet, the way it sits. Everything's perfect on this character over here, except for the fact that he doesn't have articulation, which we're going to see get improved as we keep going. But you can move his arms up and down. He comes with his blaster. Definitely army build this guy. I've got a number of them. I have them all sitting in my troop transport because they go perfect with that. His head is on a ball joint, so you can move it side to side. You can pop it off if you needed to. But it's definitely a perfect sculpt Stormtrooper. You can see what he looks like down below the waist as well. The sculpting's amazing on him. I mean, call me old school. I love having these figures. If they're in these poses and if the sculpt is good, I can put up with it still, especially for a good price point. So I did pick up a number of these guys. That's what he looks like from the side. And he was the best version Stormtrooper just because of his scale, because of his sculpt, because of his paint apps, because of his shine. He's perfect. And he came out with Rogue One. Of course, he became a regular addition to many collections, I'm sure. There's his foot pegs on the bottom. And there's another look at him before I put him back. So just remember that helmet. You're going to see it again. So that was with Rogue One. Once Rogue One was done, we'd have to wait a few more years. Finally, in 2019, you know, 2018, Hasbro announced that, guess what, Vintage Collection's coming back. And then in 2019, we got a brand new Vintage Collection figure. We got a Rogue One Stormtrooper, which was based on the Mimban Stormtrooper that originally came out for the figure line for the Solo movie. But it had a more dirtier look, and of course we'll show that in a different video. But they used that same sculpt and design, and they made the new Vintage Collection Rogue One Stormtrooper, and they used that head from that from that Rogue One Stormtrooper that we saw before, just now over here. And that's this guy here. Well, first we'll show you what he looks like carded. So there he is on card, Rogue One Stormtrooper. Amazing Stormtrooper. Very, very difficult to acquire. If you ordered one, you probably got one. If you didn't order one, you never found this in the store. And it's the perfect Stormtrooper design. The only thing missing on this guy is rocker ankles, which we're going to look at in a second here. But this is a perfect Stormtrooper design. Let's show you what he looks like on the card back here. He's VC 140. There's a few other characters that came out with him. The Praetorian Guard, the Stormtrooper, the Captain Phasma, Lando, Chewie, and Yakface, Salt Marie. So that's him on card. Let's look at him loose. See what he looks like. That's him over here, fully articulated. You see, I have him posed, holding his blaster rifle with both hands, which is something that we could never perfectly do, but we can do that now with this Stormtrooper. You can see that head is using that Rogue One Stormtrooper head. It's a perfect sculpt. Like, again, perfection. We get action figures like this. It's a shame that we can't find them in the store and just army build them. But, you know, stay tuned for that. So, articulation, let's show you what that looks like at the shoulders there. You can move the shoulder all the way up. You can turn him that way there. You can bring his arm in. Has articulation there at the elbow. The elbow's a little bit thinner, which they started doing with the Vintage Collection figures. But, of course, you have full movement there. And then, of course, you have the movement here at the wrist as well, where you can bend his wrist upwards. So you can do a lot of things with this figure and bend it back down. Let's put it back straight. But you have a lot of options on this figure here. There's his blaster. I'll show you what that looks like. So a nice newly sculpted blaster, more accurate. I put that in his hand there. We go articulation here at the waist. You can see it swivels. Head's on a ball joint, okay, which we come to expect. We saw that was on the case on the Rogue One as well. Down below the waist tail, you see he's got his belt, and he's got ball joints at the hips. So he can move his legs out. They're not exaggerated. They don't stand out like a sore thumb. They fit in there nicely, where you can't even tell that they're ball joints, which is awesome. You can bend him at the knee. You can swivel his knee back and forth. You can do whatever you want with this character. You have articulation, of course, at the ankles as well. But you don't have the rocker ankles, so you can't go side to side. And that's something I'm sure that they're going to improve in the near future. But that's probably the only thing missing on this figure from making him the definitive version of a Stormtrooper. Other than that, he's perfect. So let's see what he looks like full body pose there. Okay, we'll turn him to the side. And let's look at him on the back. And you can see on the back, he's fully detailed painted. His full belt is painted there. He's got the insignia here. You can see the detailing on the back of the helmet. You can see the black parts on the outfit to define, you know, where his armor is and where his leggings and stuff are on there. And then we're turning back around to the front. Let's look underneath, see that he's got foot pegs too, which is nice. But that's our Rogue One Stormtrooper, and become our definitive Stormtrooper. And we can't get enough of these guys. And Hasbro, if you're listening, just keep releasing these guys in every single wave you do. You will never stop selling these guys. Believe me. They are army builder fodder. So, we get another Stormtrooper a year later, this time with the Mandalorian. Mandalorian comes out. Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And guess what? Mandalorian goes to visit an Imperial rep to talk about Baby Yoda as his bounty, and he runs into remnant Stormtroopers. So Stormtroopers from the old regime, and of course they're weathered now. The Empire's gone, so these guys, they're wearing their original armor, and there's not really any way to take care of it. So it's gotten weathered, battle damaged, and it's such a nice look and mysterious look to these characters. There he is on card. There he is on the Mandalorian logo there on the card. We're going to show him loose. He's basically the Rogue One Stormtrooper, identical to that one, just repainted to be part of the Mandalorian. And that's what he looks like on his card back. And of course, on his card back, he's VC number 165. And then there's some other figures that he comes with in the line there on the back. So let's put that card back over here. Let's just look at the figure as well in some detail. I do have one loose to show you. So he's that same, Rogue One, except for the paint job with the weathering. He's got the yellowing going on the armor, and he's got the dots to show that he's damaged and that he's been through some battle and that he's, trying to keep the Empire alive. So he's got a nice look to him and a worthy addition to the collection as well. So that's what it looks like from the front with the weathering. That's what it looks like from the side. So just exactly the same figure we just looked at. You can see there's some weathering here on the back as well. On the leg, on the back of the wrists there, on the back of the helmet. There's some detailing there as well, but definitely a nice figure. If you're going to do that scene, we're going to get that, that cantina as well from Navarro, and you'll be able to use these guys in there. So hopefully they release some more, so we can set up our whole diorama with Moff Gideon attacking the Mandalorian and company. Okay, so that was in 2020. Let's put him back over there. We'd also get a carbon freezing chamber in 2020 with a vintage collection, and it would have a figure included on card back, and that would be an Empire Strikes Back card back version of the Stormtrooper. I have him carded over here. That's the only way to get that figure. The card back is really nice as well for this character. You can see it's from the carbon freeze chamber with a nice orange lighting from the lights there in the scene setup. And again, it's a different sculpt of the Stormtrooper, so it's a worthy mention over here. But it's the first time we're getting him on the Empire Strikes Back card back, so it was awesome to have that. And here's what he looks like from the back with the other characters on there. And then, of course, he's VC number 171, just to show you that. We'll look at him loose as well. I do have a loose version of that, of him, because if you wanted to complete that scene, you had to get 2 carbon freeze chambers and connect them side by side. So that's him over here, the figure. Let's bring him close. You can see he's a slightly different sculpt. He does have that Rogue One head sculpt still, but you can see the body's a little bit different. The body's thicker, especially at the elbows. You'll notice it's not the same body sculpt. This body sculpt that they're using over here, it's basically the vintage collection number 41 figure that we talked about earlier, which is that Sand Trooper body, okay, but with a new head sculpt on there. So that's the figure that we're getting with this guy here. So articulation we were already used to on this character, but with that new, head, so it makes him look like a brand new character. And he fits in nicely. He does not look like he doesn't fit into the collection. He definitely fits, but curious as to why they never used the Rogue One body, but I guess they wanted to give us a slightly different figure to include in this set. You can see the detailing on here. He's got a nice white glossy look to him. The character does, and his blaster's got a nice additional paint job there. You can see like right on the middle part there's a little bit of silver painted in, so that gives it a nice, updated style to the blaster. But again, you can never have enough Stormtroopers, so I didn't mind that it's coming with it. He's got his working holster. That's what he looks like from the back. But you can never have enough of these guys, Stormtrooper wise. And then this is the best way. If it was the only way that we're going to get him on an Empire Strikes Back card, then we have to live with it. So it's in a nice addition to the collection, and he's definitely worth mentioning as another Stormtrooper. So Just a couple of things I'd like to mention as well. Since we're talking about the Stormtrooper, let's bring up the retro collection. So Hasbro re-released the retro collection in 2019. Stormtrooper was one of them. We'd get original sculpt of the Stormtrooper on the original card back. That's this guy over here. So they just made a new version of that original, 1978 Stormtrooper, put him on a Star Wars card, gave it a weathered card, okay, to try and keep it different from the ones you find in the store. You'll notice on mine here, I took the sticker off, the retro collection sticker, but I did pay for it a bit. When I took it off, it ripped my card back slightly there, but it's still a nice representation of that card. And I didn't take the stickers off my other ones as a result, but that's the Stormtrooper. Let's show you what it looks like from the back. And you can see the other characters that he came out with as well in the line that they stuck on the back there. So that was retro collection in 2019, and of course they've continued that retro collection today. They did make one more in 2020. They made us another Stormtrooper. I don't have him here. We'll throw a picture up. It's a retro collection version of that same Stormtrooper, but this time a remnant version from Mandalorian. So Monopoly game, Mandalorian version of Monopoly, and it came with a remnant Stormtrooper. So it's identical version of that Stormtrooper there. Just more of a weathered look. And want to make, of course, an honorable mention over here to the Black Series version. Let's give them some love as well. Hasbro did make a Black Series 6-inch version of the Stormtrooper. That's this guy over here. Wanted to bring him into the fold to show you. I have mine pre-posed. It's a very, very nice action figure, sculpted really well. Again, when they make these things, you don't really know how they can make it better until you see them make something better. And that was the definitive Stormtrooper for many years. And I have mine posed there. You can see articulation-wise, he's got everything. Shoulders, elbows, wrists. You can hold the blaster with both hands. You got the belt there. He's got the holster on the belt over here where you can put his, blaster rifle in. Articulation at the knees, of course, at the ankles there. We turn around to the back so you can see the detailing there on the back as well, on the back of the helmet, on the back of his plate there on the insignia. And then, of course, underneath, you can see that he's got foot pegs, and they painted his feet gray underneath there. So that will be definitive for a number of years for the Black Series 6-inch line. And again, you can never release enough of these guys. And then they make another version with a Mandalorian for the Black Series line because the Stormtrooper appeared in there. And we get this guy. We get a brand new sculpt, and this thing's just amazing. This is definitive. This destroys the other one. It's got more of a gloss to it. It's got a better sculpt all around. Articulation everywhere. You can see the paint job that he's got done on here on the helmet. Let's put them side by side just to show you there for a second. And you'll see what I'm talking about. So a new representation of the Stormtrooper. The helmet's a little bit smaller, but it looks a little more accurate overall. Everything looks a little more defined. Even the chest piece, the black going around the chest piece, it's a little more accurate. We don't have all these pins showing up on the shoulders over here. See that? Pins are gone. Pinless. At the legs as well. Definitive Stormtrooper. I've only ever found him in the wild once. And I almost passed on it. I said, I'm probably going to see him again. And I changed my mind and ended up getting him. So if you're a fan of the Black Series line and you want a Stormtrooper, that's the guy to get. For sure. And then, of course, that original Stormtrooper from the Black Series line did come out on a vintage style card for the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. I have that to show you as well. Let's bring that in just to show you quickly here. So there he is on card back. It's worth a mention. It's nice to have these to display them. If you like the original card backs, then it's one of those figures you'll want to have. If we turn that around to the back, you can just see what other figures it came with as well in the line there. I don't have the space to put them into the shot here, but I did want to bring it up and give it some love as well. So that's it for the Stormtrooper. Just an amazing addition, an amazing evolution over the years for Star Wars. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I love making these videos. Stormtrooper is a definitive character in Star Wars that continuously needs to be released and keep the brand popular. And there'll never be an issue to keep these guys on store shelves. They'll always sell out. So they are going to release through Hasbro Pulse. They've released already a 4-pack, so you can army build them. They're a little pricey. They come out to about $20 each. But again, if you like that Rogue One Stormtrooper, you're going to get a whole bunch of them if you get them through Hasbro Pulse in the 4-packs. If you didn't get a chance to get these or you didn't get enough of them, that's your alternative way to get a bunch of them to bring them home. and set them up in your Star Wars displays proudly. So thank you so much for watching. Please, like, click, and subscribe. And I look forward to making more videos. Thanks so much. See you soon.